Tuesday, April 30, Correction with Love. Question: what does Proverbs teach about the importance of discipline and correction of a child? Proverbs 10, verse 17, He who keeps instruction is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. Proverbs 23, verses 13 and 14. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. Proverbs 29, verse 1. He who is often rebuked and hardens his neck will suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. And verse 15. The rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Parents sometimes discipline their children to impress upon them what is socially unacceptable behaviour, to punish for disobedience, or even to express their displeasure when embarrassed. But what is God's intention regarding discipline for these young members of his family? Proverbs sets discipline in the context of hope for the future. In Proverbs 19, verse 18, Chasten your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. Godly parents know that children have a sinful nature. Only one power can help them with this, and this power is Christ, as we read in the book Education by Ellen White, page 29. Christ is the light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world, John 1:9. As through Christ every human being has life, so also through him every soul receives some ray of divine light. Not only intellectual but spiritual power, a perception of right, a desire of goodness exists in every heart. But against these principles there is struggling and antagonistic power. The result of the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is manifest in every man's experience. There is in his nature a bent to evil, a force which, unaided, he cannot resist. To withstand this force, to attain that ideal which in his inmost soul he accepts as alone worthy, he can find himself in but one power. The power is Christ. Cooperation with that power is man's greatest need. In all educational effort, should not this cooperation be the highest aim? The true teacher is not satisfied with second-rate work. He is not satisfied with directing his students to a standard lower than the highest which it is possible for them to attain. He cannot be content with imparting to them only technical knowledge, with making them merely clever accountants, skilful artisans, successful tradesmen. It is his ambition to inspire them with principles of truth, obedience, honour, integrity, and purity, principles that will make them a positive force for the stability and uplifting of society. He desires them, above all else, to learn life's great lesson of unselfish service. End of quote. The mission of Christian parenting, including discipline, is to lead children to God. Supporting a tender plant. Through Christ, discipline is seen not as punishment, nor as an expression of authority, but as redemptive correction. God's plan is that loving parents, knowing the strength of sin, guide their children's footsteps to Christ. Caring parents correct kindly and firmly, restraining and guiding children through the early years, much as a horticulturalist provides support to a newly planted tree, until self-control emerges and a youth comes to trust in God and cooperates with the divine plan for salvation, growth, and maturity. Question: what message for parents is found in Proverbs 13:24, 23:13 and 14? First of all, Proverbs 13:24. He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. Proverbs 23, verses 13 and 14. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. All told, just a few verses mention the rod, Hebrews shebet, in the context of disciplining children. Popular within Christian parenting literature is the notion that parental use of the rod should be like that in the heavenly shepherd who uses it to guide his flock. Psalm 23 verse 4, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, for your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Elsewhere, Scripture points to patient teaching, consistent modelling, good communication and close relationships for influencing change in children. Deuteronomy 11 verses 18 and 19 reads, Therefore you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul, and bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. The child's feeling of being loved by his or her parents is vital if discipline is to have its desired effect of being corrective and redemptive, as we read in Proverbs 13:24, He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. So, to finish today, when discipline has missed its intended purpose by being too harsh or misunderstood, how can parents set matters right with their children? You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. This service is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department and Christian Services for the Blind. Remember, God is always faithful.